channel. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Happy holidays and happy Vlogmas Day 20. Wow, we're getting so close to the holidays, aren't we? And I just, I always tend to get so exhausted around this time of year. So I try to take things as slowly as I can. However, the recipes that I've been working on this week really went by like a whiz, and I put so much effort into that gravy. It took a full 12 hours to film because the chicken stock takes 4 hours, and cooking the turkey on top of the stove, that's another 4 hours. And then the liquids to seep and simmer all on their own after it's been strained, another 3 or 4 hours. I only have 2 more holiday recipes to complete with you. Probably I'm not going to be trying anything else after that because I really need to de-stress. But tonight we are going to be baking some sugar cookies, a nice simple recipe. And I hope that it really turns out. This is a 2-day process because the cookie dough needs to refrigerate overnight. So there's another few hours that I have to fill in between with. And so before we get to the cookies though, we are going to talk a little bit more about the history of Christ and the nativity story. And I want to touch on a few more things that can make a lot of people wonder about or even doubt, perhaps, the authenticity of the Christ narrative as a whole. By the way, the turkey stuffing that I made for you yesterday turned out fabulous. And so I think that maybe I should have made it loose. Of course, you can add other items. That is just my way right now of making a turkey stuffing. I really battled with the idea of putting in some crushed pine nuts or cashews. Maybe I will do that in the future. But I simply made it the way I did last night. And it only took about 40 minutes to bake. And the thing is, you can't freeze it. So once it's cooked, it's gotta go down, go down the hatchet. And you can't really keep it for that long because of the egg. And so I hope that you guys do try a different sort of stuffing this year. Keep changing it up because that is all part of the secret about keeping a turkey interesting and tasty and appetizing. What can I say? Up until now, I've basically only ever been basting turkey with maybe a little white wine and some red wine vinegars, stuff like that. But I'm beginning to try to look beyond those liquids for something new and different to baste the turkey with. Any ideas? So we've already gone over a few of the concepts regarding things that create doubt in people's mind about the nativity story and Jesus Christ in general. And by that I mean not only, not necessarily doubting the existence of Jesus in history, but what he actually represented and stood for. So we talked about the 3 magi, and when they actually did visit Christ, even how many they actually were, what the reason for their visit was. I believe if they did exist, it had something to do with the king, Herod, at the time. And we also have to remember, guys, that in those days, the days of the Roman Empire, a period in history that I studied for my exams inside out. And I realized, you know, about the culture that Augustus, he was quite a humanizing and decent character, as long as it was all for, you know, the Roman Empire. And I'm going to leave it at that because, of course, I did not know Augustus. But I think that we can sum up the entire historical context of Jesus with that sort of clash. The humanizing side of nature versus Matthew's dragon side of nature. And now the dragon doesn't occur in any of the other four Gospels, but it does occur in Matthew. Is it Matthew? I think it's Matthew. No, it was John who introduced the dragon into the nativity story. So with all of these subconscious symbols that pop up in the various versions of the nativity story, it's no wonder that in the back of our minds, we're almost ready to begin to doubt or fear what exactly these gospel men were actually trying to tell us. So one thing for sure that I, in my own mind, and from all the history writing and reading that I've done, I believe that the dragon is very firmly associated with the superpowers of the Roman Empire world. And I'm not saying just the Roman Empire kings, but all kings who were universally ruling at the time. And it gives us an idea that these superpowers were actually beyond human. They were much more than any sort of strength that a human person could bear. And so we start to think of these supernatural and magic elements that are added just by such symbolism to the story of Christ. And so the negativity that surrounds the birth of Jesus is the fact that he had to come to this world, as it is explained to us, in order to redeem or suffer for the sin of man. He had to take on the burden and the responsibility of cleansing the soul of man. And that's basically, essentially, what people are led to believe when they read into the nativity story. And so we associate the dragon, you know, with the serpent and a devil. It's all evil power, beyond human, like magical and supernatural. So we are kind of, you know, trying to test the waters there. Wow, should I believe that? No, I don't know. That sounds evil to me. And so even though we know that Christ himself was not evil, all of these surrounding symbols were so powerful. And the way that the story is told is almost in a sense of you know, a threatening veil. Have you ever heard somebody talk to you and it sounds like a veiled threat? Well, in some parts of the nativity story, depending on which version you read, you can sort of sense that threat behind the words. And it's funny because in those days, nobody read or wrote. It was an oral culture. And so that's why so many of these facts have never been written in stone. And so when I think of Jesus Christ and all the stories that surround his life and his birth and his death in many ways, a lot of it is mystery. A lot of it is alleged, and it's up to us to have faith in what we are told and to have faith in Jesus and his humanity. But I also have heard that he's almost on a parallel with Santa, right? Santa Claus. And I, as a child, by the time I was 7, I knew, from pulling all those Santa Claus beards in those malls, that there was no Santa. There was no Santa, at least not where I lived. But when you look at Jesus, that kind of doubt just never comes up for me. I cannot doubt the word of the gospel. I can wonder about its context. And I think in order to understand the gospels better, it's good to know about the context. And yeah, those were really ruthless days. Men were so powerful and so driven for power. It's a wonder why, we have a figure as humane and benign as Christ popping up from that very point in history. I know that he probably would have served an enormous amount of inspiration to people who had lost all hope because of the way that the politics of the times were going. So when I look at the Passion story, I think that if there could be a little piece in every one of us taken from Jesus in these horrible, hard times that some of us are having, I think it would be very inspirational. And what I mean by that is that Jesus tried to change what he saw then as wrong or as evil. And it was his own way of trying to restore balance to the earth in a universe that was filled with greedy people and money-hungry people and selfish people and evil people and conniving people. He didn't want any part of that. And he did see money as a big turnoff for humanity, because once you have money in the picture, everything becomes a compromise, and he didn't like that. And he wanted to restore peace and keep peace. That much from the Passion story I really did gather, and I think in a way Augustus was sort of aligned with that, but he wanted it done his way. He wanted it done on the conditions that were set up and established by the Roman world. So in a way, Augustus was a very humanizing king. He was he was a humanistic king, and he really used the arts as a way to get through to people and, to have them see the right way. And I'm not saying Augustus was 100% saint, because I don't know, but what I'm trying to say is that he and Jesus sort of had a lot of common aims, but Jesus was not having any of that commercial wealth. He was a true humanitarian. I believe that he may have been a hermit. He wanted the simple things in life. He wanted a minimalistic lifestyle. And so, yeah, he was a true missionary at heart. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and I probably said it better in my exams, but that Augustus was trying to accomplish his own paradise, his own retreat of a good world. He wanted his empire to be a retreat for reformed criminals. He wanted to attract immigrants in order to build a stronger and better empire. He wanted to weed out all the thorns that were cropping up in human nature as all of these people emigrated. Now that began with Julius Caesar, of course, but what I'm saying is that Jesus was probably inspired by that, but he had a different sort of attitude. And so it's true that I think that arts at that time began to develop and blossom into something else that nobody had ever seen. Theater and drama and literature became more and more dramatic and passionate. And so it's because Augustus knew that passion was the way to humanize a population. So anyway, I'm not going to say too much more on that, but if you get my meaning, it's all in the context. And the Jesus story really kind of fits in with that. We don't know precisely how much of what's in the gospel was manipulated by the Roman Empire's influence and what was actual truth. We have to kind of figure it out ourselves. And the only way we can do that is to understand the Roman world a lot better. Like, you know, the back of our hands. And so, yeah, that's so fascinating for me. And so, isn't it a clash then, the empire of Augustus, when we think of Mary and Jesus allegedly on the donkey going to Bethlehem where Mary eventually gave birth? I don't know if the donkey ever even existed. It would be a pretty hard way to travel. Some people say it was a 3-day journey. Other people say it was a 20-minute journey. I don't know, because it depends on how you get there. But it's sort of, it's very hard to visualize how the scenes actually went down. Yeah. But Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus were a definite clash. And it almost, you know, the parable of Jesus could be taken as a way to clash against the whole myth of Augustus and his awesome empire. What a clash, though. And I think in order to make people wonder about their existence and make the necessary changes that they could, we needed that clash. We needed to see the opposites of both worlds in order to make the right decisions. But somewhere between the glory of the Roman Empire and the humility of Christ and his mother and father, there is, you know, the discrepancy between truth and parable, or truth and myth. We have to sort of come to a meeting of the minds and figure out which story leans more to the truth and which leans more to myth. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty confident about the existence of Christ and Mary and Joseph. Let's put it that way. And even though I know that the empire of Augustus did exist, you know, I don't know how it existed. I don't know how many lives were taken to sustain the existence of such a powerful and large empire. I don't know. Many, many thousands. And when we read some of the passages in Luke, for instance, Luke, and it's when they talk about this baby Jesus who is going to take back the kingdom of Judah or Judea, and, reinstate the political power of that part of the world, it goes in complete clash against Augustus, right? Even though there was this threat in some of the Gospels that we read that Jesus would be all-powerful and very mighty, he was also a man of peace. So if we forget that, then a lot of what we read tends to be very negative. And so, in that respect, the nativity story has a sense of, it makes baby Jesus almost dangerous. Now, at the time, the Roman Empire was a pagan empire, and so the clash would have been quite quite strong and ongoing. And Jesus was the baby who represented that turmoil and friction between the two worlds, and in the quest for truth, the people then needed to see what the truth actually was, and sometimes they couldn't just simply be told the truth. They needed to be shown the truth in order to make the correct decisions and save the world. I really think that a lot of the symbolism in the Gospels were there to serve that purpose, to make people stand up and think for themselves, and therefore do something, and not choose the way of the sword, because so many lives had been sacrificed. And, in war, not all wars can be fought violently and well. Just because there's a war going on and it's violent, that doesn't mean those who yield the sword are going to be, the ultimate winners. And that is what I mean when I say that Augustus was a humanitarian. He was very humanizing for the world, but only up to a certain point. And of course, when confronted with violence, people have to defend themselves. But so I guess what I'm saying is that baby Jesus stood for peace and stood for standing up for one's own rights and voicing one's own opinions and not backing down ever, no matter how wrong the other party or how strong the other party or other people are. And that's a lot of what I get out of the nativity story and all the parables that surround baby Jesus. Wow, that was a lot. And so, now I think I'm going to leave that with you and begin on my cookie dough. beginning to measure out the ingredients to make a batch of sugar cookies. And I thought that I would simplify my Christmas baking this year by just sticking to one sweet and trying to eliminate all the other things. I really did consider making the cassatelle again, but I think that one batch of cookies will be enough. So here we go. I'll show you the ingredients and then we'll get started. We are beginning with 4 cups of all-purpose flour, which is already measured in this bowl. And now we are going with 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, which is 3 of these. And then we're going to do 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder as well. And then we're going to make sure it's all sifted together and there are no lumps. And we're going to set that aside. And we're going to start on the rest of the cookie recipe. So the next step is mixing together 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 cup of sugar, and I'm using brown sugar, and 1 cup of room temperature butter, unsalted. And guys, it's just the right texture. It has to be like this. Can you see that? It's not stiff and hard. So I'm going to mix these together in a stand mixer, and then we are going to be ready to put in the flour, and we'll roll out the dough. for tonight. These 2 pieces of cookie dough are going to refrigerate overnight, and tomorrow we will roll them out and stamp them with the cookie cutters and decorate them and pop them into the oven for a few minutes. So I will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening and watching.